She fit the pattern. Oldest would be the quiet thinking type, second oldest the troublemaker, and so on. She had just turned 15 going on 26. She had the looks of her mother. Her height and hair color, her build, even her sense of humor. Looking at her sometimes I felt nostalgic. She saw me looking at her one time and commented, "You look sad, Dad." "Yeah, a little. You miss Mom, don't you?" She knew me. "Yeah, I do, honey," I confessed. "You remind me of her at times." Lisa came over and gave me a hug, a warm, tight, close hug. "I miss her too, Dad." We held each other and I realized it was something else I missed, the closeness, the physical affection. I was suddenly aware of her breasts pressed against me. I didn't back off. Maybe I was being selfish, but it felt good. Lisa had adopted the mother role in the family since Jennifer had died. She made sure the younger kids got the things they needed if I wasn't around. She helped me plan things and even sat in to help balance the checkbook and consider our expenses. It wasn't past me to put my hand over hers and give it a squeeze when we were close together like that, or to remind her how much of a help she was. When I could, I tried to give her some extra liberties or more allowance to make up for the extra things she was doing instead of being a teenager. There was a night when we had the younger kids in bed and she and I were up watching a movie. I was sitting on the couch and she had been leaning against me. The movie was a little long and she had dozed off while being snuggled up to me. I realized she'd gone to sleep with my arm around her and her head on my chest. I had intended to raise my arm up while not disturbing her too much, but the motion was awkward and my hand accidentally cupped her breast. I froze there, suddenly afraid I'd wake her and have her discover my hand in the wrong spot. I could tell she wasn't wearing a bra and I could feel the warmth of her through her t-shirt. It might have been curiosity or my own selfish motives, but I gave her breast a gentle caress. I felt the firmness of her and at the same time was aware of her delicate softness. I realized this was my daughter and moved my hand off her. I gave her a nudge, and although I meant it to be innocent, the Freudian slip popped out. "Lisa, I want to take you to bed." And, "Okay." I knew what I said, but it wasn't what I meant. Well, I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I still felt the memory of her breast in my hand. I scooped her up off the couch and took her to her room. She hooked her arms around my neck while I carried her. She was wearing her nighttime t-shirt and PJ bottoms, but I felt physically closer to her than I ever had before. I laid her on her bed and got a blanket over her and looked at her angelic, sleepy face. I paused to move the hair back away from her eyes and mouth and admired the gentle beauty of her. I kissed her on the lips, just a little longer than I should have, and told her good night and that I loved her. She caught me in her arms and pulled me close. "I love you too, Daddy." I kissed her again, but just a peck this time, then I got out of there. I was disturbed with myself. What I was feeling and what I was thinking weren't the kinds of things I should be doing. When I kissed Lisa, I felt that I wanted to climb into bed with her. I had to take control of myself for her sake. She was just a girl, in fact my daughter, and I was thinking of her and sex. This couldn't be this way. I tried to get back to our normal routine, shopping, cooking, the typical family stuff, but Lisa would do little things that would just set me on fire. She'd hook her arm through mine as we walked through the store, or lean her head on my shoulder as we stood near each other, or if I was doing the bills she'd come up behind me and rest her hands on my shoulders the same way her mother did. More and more I was wanting to respond to her attentions in ways I couldn't express. It was one morning before she left for school when she came up to give me a hug goodbye. In the way she did, she pulled me close to her and held me tight. I knew her arms were around me, but all I could feel were her breasts against me. I pulled away from her rather suddenly. "Daddy?" she asked me in a calm voice. "What's the matter?" I couldn't say what I was thinking, and she sensed my hesitation. She pulled me into a close hug again and caressed my back lightly. "You can talk to me, Dad. What's going on?" She sounded reassuring. Well, I fumbled for the words. "I love you, Lisa, and I love you too, Daddy," she returned. "It's just that." She gave me a squeeze to urge me on. "Well, you're very close to me, Lisa, and..." I was about to confess my fears and desires all in one sentence. "Lisa, when you're close like this, my body has been responding to you. I've been wanting to take you to bed, Lisa." My bed. She backed off a little but kept her arms around me and looked me right in the eye. She wasn't shocked, she wasn't afraid. She had let me say what I needed to say and didn't judge me for it. Daddy, it's okay. She held me closer and a little tighter. Nothing bad is going to happen. It's going to be okay. We'll be okay. She looked up at me and smiled in a way that made me feel relaxed. She put a kiss on my cheek and told me again that it'd be okay, then left for school. I was a little stunned. She had accepted what I said without blowing up, or being afraid or rejecting me. I loved her for that. She brought a sense of peace to me I hadn't known in some while. There was indeed a special relationship between us and I was very appreciative of it. I knew now that nothing was going to happen and I was happy for it. I could let go of my stress and fears and get back to being my normal self. Telecommuting made my life easier. I could be around the house more often than if I had to drive into the city. The downside was my work was always there and there were times when I'd work later than I should have, but all in all it was a benefit. Lisa got home from school and came into my office smiling. She gave me a peck on the cheek and told me she was going to her girlfriend's house. She'd be back in time for dinner. I suppose that was the moment I was waiting for all day. I thought maybe what I had told her this morning had put her in a state of shock and her reaction had been muted, but seeing her now, happy and carefree, made me feel good. This really was all behind us. The kids were in bed and I was laying on mine reading a textbook on the properties of elastic fluids, doing some research for work. Lisa came into my room and flopped down on the bed next to me. She grabbed the corner of the book and gave it a jiggle. "What you doing, Dad?" "Working, actually." "What are you doing?" "Working? Daddy, it's after 5 o'clock, you should be taking a break." "Oh really, and are you going to pay the bills next month?" I cajoled. "No," she giggled, "but you can't work all the time." "Fine, but tell me what I should be doing then." "I dunno. I thought we could just hang out for a while." I closed the book and set it on my nightstand. I turned to lay on my side so I was facing her, both of us with our heads propped up on our arms. "Okay, we can do that." "How was your day then?" "Good, yeah, it was good. School was okay, and when I went to Carrie's house this afternoon, she some new MP3s we listened to that I liked." I laughed a little and asked her, "What the hell are MP3s?" It was her turn to laugh. "Music, Dad, like your old CDs but on the computer." We grinned at each other and there was a moment of silence. She inched a little closer to me. "Dad?" "Yeah?" "Be there for you. Honey, you have been. You've done so much for me and our family. Maybe too much at times. You still need to be a teenager too and go out and do stuff too." "I do, but that's not what I meant. I mean, I want to be here for you here." There must have been an obvious perplexity showing on my face. I wasn't getting her point. "Dad, when we were watching the movie the other night," she paused for a moment, "I wasn't asleep." It took me a second to realize what she was saying. I felt the blood rush to my face. She put her hand to my cheek and said, "Daddy, it's okay. I want to be here for you." "Lisa," I collected my thoughts, "I love you, honey, but that's really something we shouldn't be doing. It's just been a while for me and I needed to get control over how my body was responding and..." She took my free hand and placed it on her breast and held it there. "Daddy, what you said this morning, I wanted you to say it. I've wanted it for a long time." My mind went a little cloudy. I was distinctly aware of my hand on her breast and I could feel her nipples stiffening against my palm. I glanced at her crotch and could almost image being in her, the warmth, the wetness, releasing into her. Imagining her sharing herself with me, I felt the stirrings of an erection. I seemed to come back to my senses. "Honey, what I was talking about this morning was sex, not just touching. It's more than you need to be doing right now. I mean, you've never had sex and..." I had to ask, "You haven't had sex, have you?" "No, Daddy, but I want to with you." She looked me in the eye and repeated herself, "I want to have sex with you, Daddy." She pressed my hand into her breast. Before I could protest again, she kissed me. Not the hello, goodbye peck of a kiss. It was the soft, sensual kiss of a woman. She held my hand to her breast and began to kiss me deeply. I felt when she opened her mouth slightly for more and I moved my tongue to meet hers. She took her hand off mine and let me caress and explore her breast. She traced a fingertip along my back and shoulder. When we broke off the kiss, she stayed close to me, nuzzling me some and putting kisses on me. God, I missed this closeness. The feel of her, the warmth of her body, the smell of her hair all made me feel a little lost and dizzy. I wanted to sink into her. I wanted to join with her and lose myself in her. We kissed again and then I lay back on my pillow. I didn't want to reject her and I didn't want to give this up either, but I was going to have to find a way out of it. We lay there for a few minutes in silence. She was still trailing her fingertip along my chest and my stomach. I was enjoying her touch. I pulled her close to me and kissed her several more times before I fell back again. She lay her head on my chest and I hugged her with the arm I had around her. I was worried about several things. What if we didn't do this tonight, honey? That'd be okay, she told me in a comforting voice. Some at that. I was definitely turned on. I was loving the touch and feel of her, but when I thought about putting my hand to her crotch, everything just stopped. My body was responding to the touch of a woman, but when it felt like it was going to go further, the thought of her being my daughter put the brakes on everything. I was trying to find a way out of this without making it all a drama scene. I figured at least for tonight we could stop this and then I'd try to work the situation away from this happening. She was moving her hand across my chest. Just when I was thinking I could send her back to bed, she wiggled in a little closer to me and put one of her legs over mine. Figures, I was ready to send her away and she was getting closer. The next thing she did caught me completely off guard. She pushed herself against my thigh. I didn't do anything and she did it again. It was a definite pelvic thrust. She did it a third time, then she started developing a slow and deliberate rhythm. I found myself tightening my thigh muscle against her to increase the pressure on her. That just made her bear down on me harder. She kissed me again, a deep kiss, her lips parted and she brought her tongue up to meet mine. I felt her lift off my thigh, but she kept the kiss going. A second later, she took my hand and slid it under the waistband of her PJ bottoms. She wasn't wearing any panties. She pushed my hand down between her legs and there was no avoiding the wetness there. My fingertip naturally found its way into her. She kept her hand over mine and I felt her pushing my finger deeper into her. Then she'd release it and my finger would slide back out. Then she'd press it back into herself. She held me with her kiss while she used my hand to stimulate herself. I began pressing into her of my own accord and she let me do it on my own. I almost stopped when she removed her hand and I felt her wiggling some, then I realized she was pulling her PJs down. She worked them down to about her knees, then put her hand back over mine and pushed my finger into herself again, deeper this time. My eyes were closed but I knew what was there. She was wet and exposed. I was fingering my daughter and she was letting me do it. She had led me to it. I didn't realize I had such a powerful erection until I felt her rub me through my shorts. There was no hesitation in me turning my hips back a little so she could get me easier. Even through the fabric she felt good. She ran her hand along the length of me and reached down to cup my balls. God, she felt good. A minute of that and I told her I was going to come. Not yet, Daddy, and she pulled her hand away. She began pulling my shorts down. I raised myself up to help her. She got them off enough to get all of me out into the open. Then I felt her moving as she took off her PJs. We were both still laying on our sides. She got her leg up over both of mine and positioned herself to take me. The head of my dick got warm and wet, then she pushed down. My hips came up and took me the rest of the way in her. Come in me, Daddy. You need to come in me. That was all it took. I shook from my orgasm as I filled her. Our fluids mixed and ran back out onto us. I was trembling from having come so hard. She moved against me a little and I felt the aftershock contractions of my orgasm in her. She pulled me tighter to her and kissed me. That was good, Daddy. You needed to do that, didn't you? I couldn't deny it. It was probably the strongest and longest I had ever come. My quivering stopped and I could feel I was still hard. I rolled her over onto her back and lay on her. I began sliding myself in and out of her again. She began moving with me. She was willing to give herself to me again. Photos http://cpmlink.net/14c_. I realized what she was doing and I told her to stop. This one is for you, honey. I want you to come on me now. Her motions changed. She was letting me make her feel good and was responding to it. I felt her hips raise against me as she got close. I didn't remember my shorts coming off, but I realized I had the freedom of motion with my legs as she moved under me. My experience, or maybe it was because she was so much like her mother, but I seemed to automatically know what felt good to her and I did it for her. She started some labored breathing, then she tilted her hips up to get me as deep as possible into her as she came. We lay there together, still joined and enjoying the moment. A dark thought occurred to me. She fit the pattern. Oldest would be the quiet thinking type, second oldest the troublemaker, and so on. She had just turned 15 going on 26. She had the looks of her mother. Her height and hair color, her build, even her sense of humor. Looking at her sometimes I felt nostalgic. She saw me